Hey guys, what's going on? Tomar Mellon here today, and today I wanted to make a video talking about whether you should grade your cards at SGC. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about Yu-Gi-Oh cards, although some of these principles can be applied to Pokemon, although be careful, the markets are fundamentally different. So first, a quick self-promo. Follow me on Instagram at WatomarMelon1, and then check out my last video if you do enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh content. I'm showing off some of my most expensive English cards, and it has more than a $10,000 value. Also, search Watomar Melon V2 in your YouTube search bar, and check out my second channel. So the quick TLDR for whether you should grade at SGC, it's viable for two things currently, and I think it has potential to expand outside of those two things. The first of those two things is if you're trying to grade stuff for your personal collection, they are a respected grading company, they get your cards back quick, and they don't cost too much. So personally, I love their slabs, and so I send my cards, or I have been sending my cards to SGC. If you don't like the slabs, don't send your personal collection cards to SGC. I also think there is a money-making opportunity for lower to mid-tier cards, and possibly bulk in the near future. I mention that because as PSA opens up lower service levels, I think SGC is going to have to adapt and open up service levels that have an even lower cost than whatever PSA is opening, even if the return time is much faster for SGC. So I think there is some other potential in the near future. Uh, One quick note, do not put SGC cards on auction. Use buy it now / best offer. You're just going to get killed if you put them on auction. There isn't the brand recognition to make auctions go swimmingly, okay? You're just not going to get enough buyers who know what SGC is, know how reliable they are, and that their grading is legit in the Yu-Gi-Oh space to really make money on a lot of these auctions. I can talk about my personal anecdotes later, but continuing on, higher end cards, unless it's going in your personal collection, they should be subbed to PSA and BGS. The added value from those two companies, specifically PSA, for most cards that would grade a 10, and then for cards that might get a 9 at PSA and but a 9.5 at Beckett, that's the option for Beckett cards as well. The value added from these two companies is just way more than SGC. And as you start getting into those higher value cards, um, the relative added value is just enormous for these companies. And you really should just send your cards there if you're not planning to keep them. And then fourth, this is kind of an auxiliary point, but it's still important. Don't submit to pandemic grading companies unless you genuinely love the slab and you want your cards encapsulated in those slabs because you plan to keep them. Okay, most of these companies are not going to be around in 5 years. As the fad goes away for grading, so will these companies. Okay, PSA is going to get through its backlog probably in the next year. Okay, what's going to happen to these companies when PSA is operating at full capacity and their capacity is even greater than it is today? They're just not going to be able to compete. Additionally, PSA, their president, Nat Turner, has already discussed the fact that PSA plans to expand worldwide. There's going to be an office in Europe in the next 5 years, probably. Okay? And so even this company that's come out, say you live in Germany, this German company that's grading your cards, they're not going to be able to compete with the big bad PSA. It's just a fact. The brand recognition of PSA is just that much larger than any company that's popping up right now. Okay, just be careful. The big companies I would say are worth grading at are PSA, BGS, SGC, and once CGC starts grading Yu-Gi-Oh cards, CGC. They have huge investment backings, and they're probably going to be around for many years, as all of these companies have been around for decades. Okay, so taking a quick look at the SGC and PSA slabs, the slab on the left is actually my personal slab. I've sold this card, and then the slab on the right is taken from a PWCC Vault scan. Okay, I didn't have any high quality scans of my personal collection cards that are in PSA slabs, so I decided to get one that is a new cert, so you can actually get a reasonable idea of what a PSA slab in the new cert looks like as compared to the SGC slab. Okay, one thing to note is that the PSA slab is smaller than the SGC slab, so even though I've normalized this amount of space that they take up on screen, that PSA slab is zoomed in more than the SGC slab, which makes the text a little more readable, even though I'd say that the text sizes are pretty similar across the two slabs. Okay, so you guys can take a look at the front and the back, make your own judgments about what you think about these slabs. One thing I will say is that slabs are often an acquired taste. I can't tell you the number of slabs I've looked at, thought they looked like crap. The SGC slab, I didn't think it was that great when I first saw it, and then it, slowly over time gained on me, or grew on me, and then eventually, I found that it was my favorite slab to look at. But I will say that the tuxedo is something that's really hit or miss. Some people hate it, some people love it. Okay, so my personal opinions, again, this is not objective. These are my personal opinions. You can disagree with them, and that doesn't mean that we have to hate each other or that, I'm trying to, shill SGC. I'm not. I've got cons in here as well. But just looking at the slabs, I'll talk about factors outside of the slabs in the next slide. But what I like about SGC, you guys can read these things, but I'll just mention them quickly. The grade is displayed clearly. It's larger than all the rest of the text. You can't miss it while looking at an SGC slab. It's color neutral. It matches essentially any card that you submit. The tuxedo, in my opinion, which is the black border around the card, I think it makes the card look very nice, and this has to do with my personal philosophy that graded slabs should be like a museum display. It tells you what you need to know about the card. It doesn't, distract from the card at all, and it provides a clear and accurate, precise and accurate representation of the condition of the card. Those are the things, and also protects the card. So those are the things that matter the most to me in slabs, and SGC checks a lot of those boxes. Another pro is that it's ultra clear, which is very nice. This is very important to me because I don't like slabs where the slab itself distracts or takes away from the appearance of the card. I'd rather just keep it in an ultra clear binder if that was the case. And the last pro I will say about the SGC slab is that it has a display label, meaning that the label is meant to display it. There isn't a huge barcode on it. The reference number isn't taking up a ton of space. It's meant to actually display the card that's being shown. Okay, so the PSA Pros, it's compact and light. It's a smaller slab than the SGC slab, which means that you can store more of them in a smaller amount of space. They're easier to transport, especially large numbers of these things. And so that's a clear advantage of the PSA slab. It fits in the hand nicely, all these sorts of things. Additionally, it's also ultra clear. This is, both of these slabs are ultra clear, so there's not a huge distinguishing factor between the two, but I think that that's very important. The third pro I'll say about the PSA slab is that it's very uniform and organized. The font is the same for everything, and everything is neatly organized, so if you know where to look, you know exactly where to find the information that you need. The cons for the SGC slab, sorry to go back and forth between the two slabs, but I think that there is a distracting logo background in the label. So if you look at where my cursor is pointing to on the SGC slab, you can see that there is the SGC logo plastered throughout the background of the label, which to me makes absolutely no sense why you would do that. Is it the biggest con? No, but I think it's just unnecessary, and I hope that they fix that. Sometimes there's inner space between the card and the tuxedo, so not this space on the SGC slab, but there might be some extra space in between the card and this inner border right here. It's not too bad on the card that I've showed right here, but it can be a problem, and I've seen it occur on certain slabs from SGC. Although it's much less of a problem in their newest iteration of slabs for Yu-Gi-Oh cards specifically. And then the last con is that the SGC slab, it scratches super easy. I don't know if you can see the back of it. For some reason, the front never is as bad as the back, and most of these scratches actually come directly from SGC. I really don't like that. I don't know why SGC is allowing these slabs to get so scratched. I'm assuming it has to do with the actual encapsulation process, but that is something that they need to fix. Is it the worst thing? No, and it's not as noticeable when you're holding it in your hands, but when you have high resolution scans, it's clear as day. Now, this is not something that PSA hasn't had a problem with recently. The amount of junk and other shit you get on the back of these slabs for PSA is also a problem, but it's very noticeable on SGC slabs. And then the cons for the PSA slab, going back to the label, it looks like an inventory label. This is not a label that I would use to display, a specific thing. There's the barcode taking up a significant amount of space on the label. The grade itself takes up less space than the reference number. That makes no sense. These are things that, while it's neat and organized, so if you know where to look, if you don't know where to look, or if you're looking at it from afar, it's just not as clear as the SGC slab, and it looks like something I would use, to store my stuff, where it has all the information there. It's got the barcode on the front, so if I was storing the stuff, it might make more sense, but I don't really like it. Also, something I didn't mention, there are so many abbreviations on these PSA slabs. I mean, Exodia the Forbidden one is abbreviated to Exodia/Forbidden. Like, what the hell is that? Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon is abbreviated to leg dot with no space after it, Blue Eyes WHT dot dragon. Like, that to me doesn't look good. Everyone's got their own opinions, but I like how on the SGC label it's very clearly Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon. So the information is all there on the SGC label, whereas PSA, if you're a collector, you know what it's talking about, but it's really annoying to see all these abbreviations where they can't even put the full card name on it. That to me is just, abbreviating Exodia the Forbidden one to Exodia/Forbidden is not acceptable, in my opinion. And then there's also the bright red trim on the PSA label. Why not just make that black or navy blue, something that isn't as distracting? It just conflicts and, distracts from the card artwork because you have this bright red color, albeit it is a trim, so it's not as distracting, but to me, I just don't like it. So some non-slab considerations. So for SGC, some of the pros, it's respected in terms of grading. I have never heard someone say, you just can't trust SGC. Actually, I'm sure there are people who've said that, but it's similar to how people say, you just can't trust PSA. I don't understand that. They all make mistakes, and in the case of PSA, I'll get to one of their cons where there's been a systematic change in, what their expectations are for the certain grades. But, SGC is well respected, and I also love their superior grading system, okay? Now, I will say they don't have subgrades. For me, I don't like subgrades, or, at least I don't think that subgrades are a huge plus. For some people love subgrades, and this would be a huge negative for them. I understand that completely, but they're just not for me. But their superior grading system, they have the 9.5, they have 0.5 grades, which make it so that there isn't this huge discrepancy between a 9 and a 10. Also, they have a gold label, which is very hard to get. It's kind of a lottery label, but it is quite nice. It looks beautiful, and it adds that extra level of chase where some people love chasing after Beckett black labels or Beckett pristine tens. Here you have with SGC the gold label that if you really want that added chase, you can go for gold labels. And usually in my experience, they occur in around 3 to 4% of mint PSA cards. Or actually, more like 2% of mint Yu-Gi-Oh cards, excuse me. Also, $30 per card, 25 with a dealer for fast turnaround times, usually 2 to 4 weeks from sending it out your door. It's going to be arrived at your doorstep. That's incredible in this day and age. I really like that, and I appreciate that a ton. There's no backlog, so if they want to introduce bulk grading, they can at any time. So that's something to look forward for, hopefully in the near future. The population report is easy to navigate. It doesn't have as many features as a site like PSA, but it is easy to navigate, and it's not the nightmare that is Beckett. Oh my God, it's terrible. And they also have excellent customer service. Every time I've asked questions, they get back within a very short amount of time, and it's always helpful. PSA, I mean, they're pretty obvious positives to PSA. Their brand recognition is second to none, and it just adds so much value to your cards relative to other grading companies. It's kind of absurd. I mean, I personally think that the amount of value that PSA Tens add, it's just, to a certain extent, it's unwarranted. I do think that, the value added makes sense. It's the most recognized brand, but the sheer amount of value added in a lot of cases to me is just not. It's not something that I understand. But it's there. It doesn't matter what I think. I'm one member of a much, much larger market than myself. So, the value is there. There's no doubting PSA's value. And I think a lot of the value and trust in PSA comes from its buyback program. If a card is misgraded, PSA will buy it back. Or you can send the card back, they'll regrade it, I think a lot of the time. I don't know if it's policy. I think they regrade it, and they refund you the value of the card that you sent there. Or they refund you the difference between the value of the card that you received back from them and the card that you sent to them. So, it sort of solidifies their grading, even though there are certain concerns about, well, if, it graded a 10 and it shouldn't have graded a 10, obviously you're not going to send it back. And so the buyback program doesn't help for that. But, it's still a great program that helps out PSA. Their population report, I forget what they call it, but like the ability to reference collections and document your collection. Their website is just superior to other companies' websites, not necessarily in terms of UI, but just the amount of features that PSA offers. It's really second to none. And then also they have an extensive history of grading Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I wouldn't trust any other card company to grade to be better at authenticating Yu-Gi-Oh cards at the current moment. Now, CGC historically has been very good in other areas at authenticating and differentiating authentic cards from fake ones, but we'll have to see where they land in Yu-Gi-Oh, but PSA is probably the best in the business at that. Now, some cons at SGC. Poor brand recognition in Yu-Gi-Oh. This is a problem, okay? It causes liquidity problems. Can this get better in the future? I think so. But to me, the fact that people are waiting for CGC to open up when SGC is a clear tier 2 grading company, or people are sending to other like random pandemic grading companies, you'd have to have a gun to my head to submit to some of these pandemic grading companies that people are submitting to when SGC is right there. And that to me is indicative of the fact that people just don't know that SGC is an option. And that to me is concerning. I think it will get better, but it affects the value of these cards where people just don't know that SGC has been around for 22 years. They don't know that it has an extensive history of grading high-end baseball cards and some high-end Pokemon cards as well. Albeit, they don't get the respect that they deserve in Pokemon either. But, it leads to liquidity problems. As I mentioned before, you can't put the cards on auction without taking huge L's. That's a concern. It has a lack of experience in Yu-Gi-Oh! There just aren't that many cards graded by SGC Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. And I think if you had an extremely high-quality fake, you might be able to get it past SGC. Obviously, even PSA falls for some extremely high-quality fakes, but I think SGC would be more susceptible to that, although I've never seen a fake graded by SGC, but I think that's more a product of people not really sending fakes to SGC. So who knows? And then also SGC 8s and 9s are much harder to get rid of than PSA 8s and 9s. That's just how it is. Okay, some cons for PSA. The cost to grade, alright, PSA is expensive. Its lowest service level at the current moment is $200. It just doesn't make sense to send most cards at the $200 service level. Additionally, upcharges. PSA is, increasing the piece of the pie. It seems like every single time that they make an update, they're taking a larger and larger chunk of the value that the card has. And this goes into, upcharges and also the cost to grade. But, you know, oftentimes 10% of your card's value is being taken by PSA. And what happens when, you know, your personal collection, you've spent so much money grading these PSA cards, and it's entirely possible that people, will grow out of collecting Yu-Gi-Oh cards. The meteoric rise in Yu-Gi-Oh card prices might turn into a meteoric fall. I'm not saying it will, but it's entirely possible. And if you're not getting your money back on the upcharges and the cost to grade, and so even for personal collection cards, you're spending a lot of money to send them to PSA. And if prices drop significantly, you're not getting that money back. Okay. And then also the backlog. I mean, I don't really need to go on about this. Yeah, there are just millions of cards sitting at PSA that haven't been graded, and it's causing them to not open up lower service levels. Another con is the systematic difference in their grading standards between current grading and cards that were graded 2 to 3 years ago and before that. Okay, I own and I've seen and I've owned and cracked a ton of these old tens. Okay, I can tell you right now, these 10 would not. I'd say more than half of them would not grade 10 today, and I think a non-negligible amount would not just grade an 8, they would grade, or a 9, they would actually grade an 8. I think, it's possible that 10 to 15% of these things, if you cracked and subbed them today, they would be 8s. Okay? And I think, something like 40% of them would end up 9s. It's just how it is. The grading company, they've graded a lot of stuff back in the day, and I think they graded those cards at a time where they didn't really think Yu-Gi-Oh was significant, and they didn't spend the time that they should have looking over these cards and really assessing the condition of them. I'm not someone who's buying into conspiracy theories about Nat Turner, telling them that this card can only have X number of PSA Tens. I don't believe that shit. But like, it's clear. It's also, you can't just listen to people who have huge positions on, 20 million cert number PSA 10s who are telling you, no, 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 no. It's just that people are submitting trash today that accounts for all the difference in, uh, the difficulty in gemming cards nowadays. It's just not true. It's much harder to grade 10s. It is what it is. And a lot of people are not happy about that because there are a small number of graders who were in grading back in the day who have a huge number of these PSA 10s, and it's frustrating because new people can't get their hands on them. And then also, they don't have a 9.5 to differentiate 9s and 10s. This goes back to the grading scale, but, there are strong 9s that should be 9.5s and weak 10s that should be 9.5s. And I'm not accounting for, just PSA completely misgrading. I think there's a legitimate problem where you have these strong 9s that, are they a 10, are they a 9? Let's flip a coin. Those cards should be 9.5s. Okay. I hope they implement 9.5s, but Nat Turner has made it clear that there will never be a 9.5. So some overarching themes about SGC. Never put them on auction. Already mentioned this. I think it will probably get better over time, but for the time being, never put them on auction. Buy it now plus best offer is your best bet. And in my personal experience, SGC 10s are in Yu-Gi-Oh go for about 50 to 70% of PSA 10s. That is a lot less, but you can still make money sending them to SGC. It's a great option for personal collection if you like the slab. I mean, it's cheap and fast. And then it's best for $10 to $50 raw cards that are very liquid on their own. Okay, so they're raw form, it's pretty easy to actually sell them. And I'm not talking about playable cards, I'm talking about collectible cards. Okay, one of the biggest new moves is, finding something like I don't know, an Ice Dragon's Prison that's extremely playable right now, and all of its value comes from playing the card. But guess what? Why would you send it to a grading company? It's an ultra rare. It's not hard to find, and all the value comes from playing it. You can't play an SGC slab in your deck. Okay, anyone who buys it is just going to crack the slab and then put it in their deck. So you've essentially wasted $30 cost to grade. So don't grade playable cards unless you want them for your personal collection. So an example of a good SGC submission right now would be if there's a $50 card raw that would go for $300 in PSA 10. If you send it to SGC, it's going to cost you about $80 versus $250 for the express level at PSA. The turnaround times between the two are pretty similar. The SGC 10 would probably go for around $150, maybe a little more, versus the PSA 10, which might go for, $300. This is all, an imaginary scenario, but this to me seems very reasonable. You can do the math. You make $70 from selling the SGC one. Also, you have to account for fees, and the fees are going to be higher on the PSA 10 than the SGC 10. That's another thing you have to account for. The 10% eBay fee, that's $30 on the PSA 10. SGC 10 fee is going to be 15. So you're saving just right there. You're saving an extra $15 on fees as well. So there's a larger margin for the SGC slab in this case than the PSA slab. And the margins, as you get closer to the lower end, they get better for those cheaper raw cards. The problem is most, $5 raw cards are not worth grading at all. You're just not going to make money. And so that's why I put the cap at $10, where there are $10 cards that are worth grading that people actually want slapped up. So, there are niches. You can find a $75 card that makes more sense to sub to SGC. You can find, a $30 card that makes more sense to grade at PSA. But this is like a general, $10 to $50 raw cards make a lot of sense to send to SGC. So in conclusion, I already mentioned these, SGC is viable for PC and lower mid-tier cards. Don't put SGC cards on auction, and higher end cards should be sub to PSA or BGS unless you want them in your PC. And then also don't sub to pandemic grading companies. They probably won't last. So thank you guys for watching. It's been your boy Watomar Melon, and peace out.